He stuck a piece of rat skin onto his own face, then injected himself with a dose of restorative serum. He had intended to use it to repair half of his ruined face, but what happened next was a horrifying scene. The restorative serum began to spread rapidly, even sealing off his nose and mouth. To avoid suffocating to death, he had no choice but to pick up a scalpel. But no matter how many times he cut, the wounds would heal instantly. Before long, he collapsed from suffocation. Seeing this, his daughter rushed forward and stabbed him countless times. Yet the serum still turned her father into a faceless creature. In the end, he died from suffocation just like that, and the daughter who inherited her father's final wish would grow up to do something even more twisted and extreme. Congratulations! You've just stumbled upon the ultimate heavy-flavored bedtime movie, Grafted. The story takes place 10 years later, and the girl's name is Wei. After her father's death, Wei stepped up in a critical moment. She did not abandon her father's research, because like him, she also struggled deeply with her appearance. She had an extremely unsightly hereditary birthmark on her chin, so she wanted to continue her father's research in hopes of erasing it as soon as possible. Fortunately, she inherited her father's intelligence. Unfortunately, she had to live under her relatives' roof, enduring their daily disdain and gossip. Thankfully, with her outstanding grades, she earned a full scholarship to a university in Singapore, so she went to live with her aunt in Singapore, taking the opportunity to continue both her studies and her research. But unexpectedly, the moment she set foot there, it was as if a dark child had descended into the world, and one day she would unleash a storm of destruction in this foreign land. The aunt who came to pick her up at the airport was extremely warm and welcoming, and even after seeing the birthmark hidden beneath Wei's scarf, she did not show any disgust, instead offering to give her the best concealer products she had. Since her aunt was a single mother, only she and her daughter Angela lived in the house. However, because of cultural and regional differences, Angela showed no friendliness at their first meeting, and she clearly disliked this new cousin. Wei was already deeply insecure because of her birthmark, and this only made her even more afraid to speak to others. Yet when she saw a homeless man outside the school gate, she took the initiative to greet him, because he also had facial deformities like hers. They were able to understand each other more deeply. On her first day of class, Wei only dared to sit far in the back row, terrified of drawing attention. Fortunately, her academic performance was outstanding, and she scored full marks on her very first test, earning praise from the teacher in front of the entire class. Wei thought that good grades would make people like her, but the opposite happened, and everyone mocked her as a nerd. This kind of bullying is common on campus, but Wei blamed it all on her appearance, believing she had no friends because she was ugly. This only strengthened her determination to complete her father's experiment. After school, she went to the laboratory. At that moment, the teacher walked in as well, picked up her father's notebook, only to find that it was all written in Chinese that he could not understand. After learning that Wei's father had also been a scientist and had conducted research on skin transplantation, the teacher decided to make Wei his assistant, so she could freely conduct experiments there and they could exchange research ideas together. The naive Wei had no idea that this seemingly kind teacher had ulterior motives. That night, while Wei had not yet returned home, her cousin brought her friends to visit the memorial table dedicated to Wei's father. Her aunt had prepared it especially for her, hoping she would feel a sense of home. But now it became a source of laughter for the three girls, and even the birthmark on her father's face became their topic of ridicule.
Wei has one too.
That explains the scarf.
Right. If you think that's weird, you should see her room.
Next, the three of them barged into Wei's room. They were immediately startled, because Wei had been studying skin transplantation, so her room was naturally filled with unsettling items. At this moment, the three girls had no idea that they would soon become Wei's sacrifices, but it was easy to see that everything was of their own making, because the current Wei was still kind and insecure people often try to please others. She wanted to build a good relationship with the three of them, but all she received was discrimination and rejection. Even so, she kindly invited them for afternoon tea, yet as expected, her warmth was met with cold indifference. This left Wei completely disappointed. Because of her birthmark, she was treated like a monster. In the end, she could only pack up the food and give it to the homeless man from before. Her aunt was busy making a living and left early and returned late, so only the homeless man was willing to talk with her.
I can make us beautiful.
You already are beautiful.
Aside from her aunt, this was one of the few moments of warmth Wei experienced, but that bit of warmth did not last long. After returning home, because Wei's presence had interrupted Angela's date with her boyfriend, Angela vented all her frustration on Wei.
We need to set some house rules, okay? I don't want to see you, I don't want to hear you, and I definitely don't want to come home to the smell of incense and rotting food. It's disgusting.
Yet her misfortune did not end there. As someone once joked, life always seems to kick you when you are already down. Not only was Wei struggling in life, she was also repeatedly frustrated in her skin transplantation research. Her father's research had actually been close to completion, but he had never found a suitable adhesive to fuse two conflicting skin tissues. Either the fusion happened too rapidly and excessively, or it would not fuse at all, and her father had died because of the former. If they could develop a perfectly balanced adhesive, then burns, birthmarks, or congenital deformities could all be repaired with ease. Yet despite their day-after-day relentless efforts, all they gained were repeated failures. Eventually, the teacher completely lost patience, blamed everything on Wei, called in another girl, and announced in front of her that the new girl would be his assistant, and the helpless Wei did not dare to say a word. Fortunately, there is always a sliver of hope, and on her way home she happened to pick up a flyer, and the corpse flower printed on it instantly gave her an idea. That night, she secretly sneaked into the park mentioned on the flyer and found the Titanarum. This giant plant releases a smell like a decaying body when it blooms, and compared to animals, plants have even stronger self-healing abilities, perhaps making them more suitable for researching adhesives. Among them, the Titanarum was the most suitable, and it just so happened to be in full bloom when its cells were at their most active. After successfully collecting a sample, she immediately went to the laboratory to begin formulation. Unfortunately, the teacher and another female student were in the next room. The teacher secretly observed Wei's experiment. At that moment, the serum had already been prepared, and she endured the pain as she cut a piece of skin from her own thigh, intending to use her body for the experiment, and judging from the surrounding scars, this was clearly not her first time doing so. Then she picked up a piece of mouse skin and placed it directly onto the wound, followed by injecting the prepared serum into it. This experiment was extremely successful, and after fusion, the skin from two different species showed no rejection reaction at all. The teacher, thrilled by what he saw, stepped out to take a closer look, but in the eyes of the academically weak friend, it seemed that Wei had interrupted their private moment due to a misunderstanding in perspective. She assumed Wei was just like her, so she secretly recorded this misleading scene and deliberately burst out to create embarrassment. Then, under the pretense of inviting Wei to a gathering, she forcibly took her away. The teacher who remained suddenly realized that Wei had forgotten to take her father's notebook, and this gave him a shameless idea. That night, he called a Chinese friend and asked him to translate the experimental content in the notebook. He wanted to publish the findings first after understanding everything, so he could legally claim ownership of the research results. What incredible nerve! And to think he is praised in the industry as a genius. At the same time, Angela also received a message from her best friend. As expected, it was that photo. Angela was furious after seeing it, because she and her best friend had a special relationship with the teacher, so she assumed Wei was just like them. Truly, people with dirty minds see dirt in everything, so she went straight home and knocked over her uncle's memorial tablet. Meanwhile, Wei was taken by the best friend to a nearby hilltop, where she was subjected to threats and intimidation. Fortunately, she only dared to scare Wei and did not push her off the cliff. Afterward, Wei stood there helplessly, accompanied only by the crushing loneliness of being in a foreign country without parents. All of this grievance and buildup was only paving the way for the final explosion to come. When she returned home and saw her father's memorial tablet in disarray because of Angela, it became the final straw. The two instantly began to struggle with each other, but Wei was no match for the fierce Angela, and she was pinned down with her throat tightly gripped. But just as she was about to suffocate, she happened to grab a chopstick from the floor. When she regained her senses, she realized that she had accidentally stabbed her cousin to death. Even worse, her aunt had heard that the sisters were in conflict and was already on her way back. However, Wei remained unexpectedly calm under pressure. She came up with a chilling solution. She first dragged Angela into the bathroom, then took out the serum she had previously prepared. Next, she cut off the skin from her own face, then removed Angela's facial skin as well, injected the serum into it, and finally placed it onto her own face. After a painful and intense process of fusion, she successfully replaced her face with Angela's, leaving no visible wounds. It seemed the serum had been perfectly formulated, and in a way, she had completed her father's unfinished wish. At that moment, her aunt had already arrived at the door. To avoid being discovered, Wei planned to change into Angela's clothes. Her aunt entered the room, but fortunately she noticed nothing unusual, assuming her daughter was simply upset because of the sisters' conflict. What the aunt did not know was that her real daughter was lying cold beneath the bed, and early the next morning, her aunt happened to leave for a week-long business trip, which gave Wei a rare chance to breathe. She opened Angela's phone and began studying her mannerisms and habits from the videos. After arriving at school, her classmates indeed noticed nothing unusual, which made Wei extremely pleased. But she seemed to forget one thing. Angela had a boyfriend, Wei, who had been troubled by her birthmark since childhood, mistakenly believed that all of this was simply the benefit of beauty. That afternoon, under Angela's identity, she went on a hilltop date with the boyfriend, while the real Angela remained in the room. But just as the atmosphere grew intimate, a crack suddenly appeared on her forehead. The boyfriend looked confused, but in the next second, Angela's facial skin slipped off and fell onto him, and he saw Wei's blood-covered face. He was so shocked by the sight that he stumbled backward and accidentally fell off the cliff. That night, wanting to understand why the fusion would still detach, she began searching through the notebook. Only then did she remember that she had left it in the laboratory. She quickly called the teacher, but he immediately hung up. He was racing against time to study the notebook's contents, overwhelmed and buried in the work. Even after translating it into English, he struggled to understand it. It was not until he saw the sketch of the Titanarium that he realized the key detail. He immediately rushed to the park, but the Titanarium had already withered, and it was unclear whether it still had any effect. Meanwhile, Wei reattached the facial skin and went to the laboratory to retrieve the notebook. Unfortunately, it happened to be the moment when the teacher had stepped out, so she could neither find him nor recover the notebook. As she angrily prepared to head downstairs and go home, she happened to see the best friend standing below. It seemed she had once again come to meet the teacher. Looking at Angela's face reflected in the window, Wei instantly came up with a plan that would solve two problems at once. She knocked on the best friend's car window and asked her to give her a ride home. After returning home, she lured the best friend into the room and immediately shifted into attack mode. The best friend tried to run downstairs, but the main door had already been locked by Wei. Then Wei cut off the electricity to the entire house. With no other choice, the best friend ran into the backyard and made a baffling decision. She chose to hide in the pool. It is no wonder her judgment was questionable. Then Wei chased after her with a power drill. I can already imagine what is about to happen. The bubbles rising continuously from the water completely exposed her location, so Wei grabbed her by the hair and gave her a brutal cranial operation. The scene was too graphic to show. After successfully eliminating the best friend, Wei also brought her body back to the bathroom and completed the facial skin transplant. Early the next morning, she once again imitated every smile and gesture of the best friend in order to deceive the teacher. Then she sent that original photo to the police and anonymously reported the teacher. By the next day, the teacher was taken away by the police for investigation on charges of inappropriate conduct with students. Wei took advantage of the situation and went to the teacher's house to search, but before she could find the notebook, the teacher suddenly returned. It turned out that because Wei was missing and could not be questioned, the police lacked sufficient evidence and had to temporarily release him. The school only suspended him from his position. Eager to publish the experimental results, he drove away the girl Wei had been impersonating and threw himself into the laboratory. He had to quickly develop a stable fusion agent, and once he succeeded, he believed it could win him a Nobel Prize. And just as he expected, after adding the Titanarium component, the experimental results matched Wei's, and the healing effect was nearly perfect. Soon, The best friend's phone received a message from the teacher inviting her over to celebrate. This was exactly what Wei wanted. After arriving at the teacher's house, she saw him take a package of prohibited substances from a hidden compartment. While he went to pour drinks, she secretly opened the compartment. Although she did not find the notebook, she discovered the newly formulated serum. Worse still, she realized the facial skin was starting to detach again, so she quickly claimed she felt unwell and wanted to go home. The overexcited teacher did not pay attention at first, but when he noticed her hurried and nervous behavior, he immediately sensed something was wrong. After checking, he found the serum missing, though fortunately the notebook hidden on the other side was still there, and he also realized that the girl earlier had actually been Wei. That night, the teacher quietly slipped into the house through the backyard. As soon as he entered, he saw Wei slumped on the floor, motionless, clueless about the danger. He stepped forward, mocked her, and threatened her to hand over the serum. Strangely, Wei actually told him where it was.
You want your vial? It's in the fridge.
However, when the teacher opened the refrigerator, he saw the skull of his blonde lover. In the next second, Wei injected him with a sedative. He was then tied to the coffee table, and the skin from his neck to his chest was peeled back. Wei placed a piece of skin onto his wound and injected the original serum into it. She wanted him to experience the suffocating agony her father had endured, but afterward, she inserted a straw into his mouth to allow a faint stream of air, prolonging his suffering. Soon, his nose and eyes began to fuse together. Just then, an alarm suddenly sounded, and Wei immediately fled the scene. She was chased by the police and eventually forced into a subway station. By coincidence, the homeless man was there, and after revealing her identity, Wei hid beneath his blanket. But after narrowly escaping the police, she suddenly realized the serum bottle had shattered, and the liquid began fusing her with the homeless man. It seemed the teacher's formula was even more unstable. In the end, although Wei was not captured by the authorities, she completely transformed into a monster. The film reveals a cruel truth. Under extreme pain and the desire for perfection, people may willingly sacrifice themselves. The heroine's actions serve as a distorted mirror, reflecting the collective dilemma of modern society. In our attempts to escape anxiety, conform to standards, and gain approval, are we also performing a kind of self-altering transplant? The heroine's final choice is a conscious act of self-destruction. Her tragedy warns us that when becoming a better version of ourselves turns into a form of violence, its essence is no different from self-ruin. And that concludes today's story. See you in the next episode.